HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It is Thursday. We're getting closer to the weekend, aren't we? And really, we've seen a busy offseason in terms of, I guess on pins and needles waiting for the next move. You only ended up, in truth, to this point, and maybe this is how it lands, making only two moves and additions out of the portal if you're the Arkansas Razorbacks and John Calipari. But a lot of deadlines, keeping pace with player Razorbacks. You had three from last year's team go through the NBA draft combine. Then there were decisions to make. We saw an unexpected move by Boogie Flan to U-turn back to college and then end up at Florida. The expectations for Carter Knox and now Adu Thiero both landed true as to what we thought and what we've been reporting would probably happen, most likely would happen. If you look even at the percentages I gave, they were up in the 90s that Knox would be back and Thiero would be gone and stay in the NBA draft. And so we got the Thiero news yesterday afternoon. We came on in the morning, and then it was, I guess, early afternoon. Thiero, one of the last to announce, but not the very last. Arkansas seen that happen where they're in the final hours. They could have gone to 11:59 last night to make announcements, I guess, or to formally get out, whether it was announced or not. If you're going to come back to college, that was the deadline, and Thiero opted to stay in like we thought he would. So now the question marks are, well, how do you react to this if you're John Calipari in terms of your roster? The staff had been saying for a while, and we reported this, that they didn't think he was coming back. They had a place for him if he was, but they thought it was highly unlikely that Thiero would be back. They did get Carter Knox back just a couple of days prior when he made his announcement. So out of the three, you get one of those guys back, and it was the one that you thought you would get back. The only weird thing was Fland, portal instead of staying in the draft, but you didn't think you were getting him back either way. So when you feel like, when there's this sense of okay, we there were three there and we only got one back, you feel like you lost something. I think the succession plan for Fland, like we always said, was in place over a year ago when you brought in May. You brought in Darius Acuff Jr. and got his commitment by July. He signed in November. He's on campus now. Carter Knox was part of your retention plan, and it was always thought that once he tested the NBA draft waters, that would be about feedback and prepping for the next draft when he's a projected first round pick. And so you got that came true. And Adu Thiero was a guy that you really didn't know going into the season what he would do to help himself be draft ready and a viable draft pick. But what he did during the season really proved that. Remember, he was getting some mock projections before the season started for first round just based on the body and the athleticism, but he had to go out and prove something. I mean, he'd never been a high producer at the college level, and he did that at Arkansas. Question marks came up about the knee, but I've got to assume the fact that Thiero and Clutch, his representation, Clutch Agency, that they feel like they've got a draft guarantee. I told you I brought source information. It was good intel a couple of days ago that at least one NBA team that's got a pick in the second round has given him, he's got a draft guarantee, and that would be some kind of guaranteed money, probably at least 2 years worth. And that's only from one source. He could have a late first round guarantee, the stuff that my source didn't know. Maybe there's more than one guarantee in the second round, or, so whatever feedback he's gotten and whatever guarantee is out there for him, it was good enough to keep him in. So we say goodbye officially now to Adu Thiero. He again announced this yesterday, and we're talking about today. Already 5 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. So the thing becomes now is, how do you react to this? What do you do? And just going through the way I described everything, the succession plan for Flan, the idea that Thiero was going to be out, the idea that you were getting Carter Knox back, I think Arkansas has made the moves that they've telegraphed and told us they're going to make. There was a period of time where there was really good information that Arkansas was looking to do more in the portal than just replace frontliners Jonas Adu and Big Z with Nick Pringle and Malik Ewan. Some shooters, guards, big wings, things of that nature. and they ended up backing off and pumping the brakes on that. I think their retention plan became so important. Amir Brown is he just a walk on? I mean, effectively, I think he is a walk on, a true walk on. I think that will be the case. But if you look at the extra players last year outside the top 9 rotation, there were several, and some of those guys were technically getting on athletic scholarship. Some were not and were walk, like Kareem Watkins, I believe, was a walk on. Jaden Carroll-Letwa, who will be back on the team this coming season on the roster. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. He was on athletic scholarship, but they were all effectively walk-on roles. Scout team, bodies in practice, not part of your plans, even if an emergency. We saw that. Even in emergency, when you got down to 7 and really only playing 6 because Big Z wasn't playable for long stretches, you weren't relying on any of those guys, whether they were technically a walk-on or technically on athletic scholarship. They were all walk-on value. So mincing words at this point, I'm not trying to get preachy about it. It's kind of trivial to me. It's like, does it matter really what that is? I mean, we're going to talk more about the roster here when we go through how Calipari and the Hogs should react to the latest news that Thiero's staying in the draft as expected. I don't think they've reacted to anything. Again, going back, there was once upon a time they were pursuing guys, but I think that was about coverage, CYA, if you didn't retain guys that you wanted to retain or thought you would retain and expected to retain or hoped to retain. And so once that played out and they put that video out, everything, all the momentum on certain guys and things we'd been hearing just came to a screeching halt. And the staff was pretty adamant. We like what we have. Something special has to happen, something that makes sense, something, and so we can say it makes sense to add more depth. I think it does. I've said on the record, if it's my team, I want to add more than where you're at now with Thiero gone. Now that's official. Yeah, 10 players. So we're going to go through this. People are asking, what's up with Cal going through 10? So what do you do now? It's clear to me they're not going after difference makers in the portal. They went and got 2 big men who they see as difference makers, again, because you had to replace what you lost on the front line. It was a thin front line last year. You basically had 3 bigs. We can say Adu Thiero was one, but he was really a 3-4 kind of guy. And I think, when we look at Trevor Brazil returning, he's a 4-5, so he does help you. And he's obviously penciled into that starting role and a big role. And, for the first time in his career, you're going to need him to be consistent throughout a season, not just the last 9 games last year or the first 8 or 9 games before he got hurt in year 1. If you put those 2 segments together, this is a hell of a player, an all-league caliber kind of guy. But you got a lot in between there that didn't go well. Part of it was injuries. Part of it was, for whatever reason, not being his best self or even close to what he can do. So you got to hope that. So when we look at what needs are still out there, when the staff tells you they're probably done or they're happy with the 10 they have and less is more. And we went through a lot of that. We talked so many times now about how with a true 9 deep and having all 9 hands on deck, they had 1 win against a team of the Pulse. That was Michigan in December. That group did that. That happened only once. The next time that all 9 were available to play together, after you've turned your season around, as you continue to have attrition, the next time all 9 were available, it was Adu Thiero and Boogie Fland, who were your 2 leading scorers before they both got injured, and led you in every other category: rebounds, assists, steals. I mean, they led everything basically. By the time you got them back from injury, and you were in Game 3 in the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, you ended up losing that one, and neither one of those guys had their best games. They were just, for reasons I'm going to, attribute to injuries. That's what it was. So the point here is that Calipari, when he makes the point, sometimes less is more. The team proved that even through attrition, it was able to improve. Other guys improved, and the team got better. And you can measure that by wins. They needed to win quality games to even have a chance in an NCAA tournament after starting 0-5 in league play, and then 1-6. So things were dire, And as you had attrition, things got better. I continue to maintain because he recruits so well, and this year it's looking with 10 players and a true 8 deep on the 2 rotation. That that's the same premise. It's he recruits so well at each position, and his top, the guys he's targeted as his top rotation, that when someone steps out, quality steps in. The problem with that is that I'm not going to say they got lucky. They were well coached. Guys got better. They came together. It worked. It ended up working. But at the same time, do you want to gamble that every year that it's just going to be okay if you have attrition? And you might have even more attrition than you had last year, or guys, a wrong combination, because each team is different. You can't count on, just because you get quality every position, that you'll be able to survive attrition. That's how I see it. Now, let's go to the 10. Let's do that first. And then we're going to talk about, after that, what if they wanted to add somebody, what that would look like, and maybe some names that are still out there for that. So anyway, thank you for some of the comments. I may be able to get to some of those here in a little bit. So the 10, Carter Knox being the last guy back in just a few days ago, and arguably not only your top returning guy in retention, but maybe your top player on the team. I think he and Darius Acuff, I've said it multiple times, the incoming 5-star freshman point guard, those are probably your two, in my opinion, the 2 guys that are your leading candidates to lead your team in scoring and have the best shot at some kind of first team, a real path to maybe first team all SEC, maybe even at league player of the year, depending upon how well your team does. Arkansas is going to be projected, in that top 10, back into the top 10 through maybe 15, 20, some preseason rankings. It'll be in that, that gap there, that stretch of rankings where Arkansas will probably be preseason ranked. So you have a pathway, if you're ranked that highly, to perform well in what is the toughest conference in college basketball now, the SEC. And if you do well in the league, last year you didn't get anybody, despite how the season ended, because you went 8-10 in league play, started 0-5, had 14 losses, and you had your 2 best players get injured and miss games. You didn't have anybody make an all-league team from Arkansas. It seemed weird to me that Thiero didn't get in on there because of his production and impact, especially with Arkansas surge at the end of the season. But still, he missed 4 games to finish the regular season. And then, of course, we know he didn't play again until 5 minutes he got against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. So, to me, guys like Carter Knox and Darius Acuff Jr. are guys that look like the most likely to be not only all league, but maybe at the top of some of these things when you compare them to their peers in the SEC coming into it. And then I think guys like Trevor Brazile, if he maintains consistency, what he did at the last 9 games of the year, he's got another guy that's got all league potential. I think a DJ Wagner, somehow, if he moves the needle a little bit more, not just in terms of production, but limiting the turnovers, which is what I've said a bunch, he needs to work on, maybe increase the 3-point percentage. But his impact, he could be an all league, I don't think it's a stretch to say the guy, just casually say coming into it, there's a shot for him to be like a 3rd team all SEC. Now, if he blows up in year 3, it could be better than something like that. Right now, I looked at that as a possible ceiling for someone like DJ Wagner, or all defensive team. Maybe the same for Brazile. Maybe that's his path to being all league. I look at Malik Ewing and his ability offensively depends, and I think he's a starter for you at the 5, depending upon how good he is, having some kind of all league potential. I look at guys like Malik Thomas, all freshman team, maybe 6 man of the year type. The same with the Billy Richmond III in terms of 6 man. So I think Arkansas, he's recruited, Calipari recruits so well that coming into it, you can point around your roster, even only going 8 deep, and say there's all league value in all of these guys. And they say they like the 10 they have. They were thinking Carter's coming back. That got them to 10. But here's what I find interesting. I keep saying the ones, and I went through minutes. I did minutes projections not long ago. And I kept saying, I didn't really see a path for minutes for guys like Isaiah Sealy and Kareem Martel. Not that I don't think they'll play minutes, when I'm projecting an average of minutes over a season, I had all 200 pretty much gobbled up by those top 8 guys. So let's go through those again. I see the starters as Darius Acuff Jr., starting at the 1, DJ Wagner as a combo, beginning games in the starting lineup, I guess as the 2 or sidekick in the backcourt there. Carter Knox at your 3, Trevor Brazile at your 4, Malik Ewing at the 5. And again, I see guys like Billy Richmond III, Malik Thomas, your 5-star freshman shooting guard, and Nick Pringle, another 5. We'll see how they try to combo he and Ewing on the court together, and how that looks. I'm sure we'll see that at some point if you're only truly 8 deep with the guys are going to get the bulk of your minutes. But I keep going back to something. That's 8 guys. And Calipari keeps referring to 10. We like the 10 we have. When you say that, you left out a guy. You didn't say the 11 we got. And because we knew, even on the retention video, that Jaden Caroletwa was coming back. And we know why he's not lumped in with the 10, because we just said it. Whether you're technically a walk-on or technically on athletic scholarship, but effectively a walk-on role, you're not counting those guys in your – last year it was 9. They said the 9 we're getting, right? Kept saying 9. But they're not saying 8. They're saying 10. But they also said less is more. So I think we're drilling down on it here. It's 8 true deep, big role, big impact minutes. That's less than 9. But because of the attrition, you've got coverage with maybe more playable guys that are just outside your top 8. Unlike last year, outside your top 9, it didn't matter who it was. They weren't playing. Maybe guys like Sealy and Artel, and we've said this before, are guys they think they can plug and play as needed. We've been going back and forth. Are they going to have definable roles game in and game out? Are they only emergency? Are they emergency backup only and more developmental? But he keeps talking about the 10 and leaving out the guys that are more of your not going to play group is how I see that. They just added Amir Brown as a walk-on, a 5'11" guard. So really they're at 12 when you count Caroletwa. But he's not, the talking points haven't been about anything more than 10. And last year it was 9. So maybe their vision as a coaching staff is they've done enough. They got their top 8 true rotation, 2 deep. You know, the guys are going to play the heavy bulk of the minutes, but they feel like they will use guys like Isaiah Sealy and Kareem Artel for depth. You're thin on the front line again. It's Trevor Brazile and 2 other 5s, just like it was last year. I know we could say Adu Thiero was actually another 4 because he did play mostly that. So, yeah, you're even thinner than the way it looks now, unless you've got Artel and you're thinking not that he's equivalent to a Thiero, but he's another body at 6'9" that you can play and buy some minutes if it's foul trouble and attrition and or both. And you can buy some time with him in the lineup. And you plan to use him that way. The same with Sealy. It maybe gives you flexibility in that backcourt and those wing spots based on potential injuries or foul trouble or a combination of both. And you can buy some time with guys like that. They're actually playable. Guys, you plan to be more than just bodies in practice and goodwill in the locker room and good for your team chemistry and those kind of things. Maybe there's more to that. And in their mind, the coaching staff, they have exceeded what they did last year with 9 guys to 10. I'm not trying to make justifications that I agree that I see it that way. I think there's a lot of question marks outside your top 8. I still think that's a bit of a roll of the dice to count on the 9 and 10 guys that you have in this 10, quote unquote, because that's how they framed it. That's not to say that I know more than the coaching staff does, but it is to say that we saw last year how dicey things got because of injuries. We saw the fact that we questioned the preseason Arkansas's 3-point shooting. Back in June and July when they were going through limited stuff and we knew what the roster was, I was bringing that up, frontline depth and that. And sure enough, and overall depth, and sure enough, all of those things revealed problem areas that we thought would. Again, did you address 3-point shooting with your 10? I don't see that you did. I don't see the G. It doesn't mean that it can't work out where it's equivalent to or even a little bit better, and you make a small improvement. But just looking at it, I could also argue you would take a step back on a less than desirable outcome in your 3-point and perimeter shooting. That could go both ways. We're 20 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. And then on that, at that 4 spot, you're banking a lot on Trevor Brazile, who has a history, again, of injuries and up and down kind of play. And again, you've got not one, but 2 windows spread out over time, over 3 seasons, of where he's really been good consistently for 8, 9 games. But a season is 30 plus games. So if you put together his best moments, you don't even have a full season since he's been at Arkansas in 3 seasons. I'm not trying to bag on him. I'm saying where's somebody else in that rotation to answer that? Because I'm not sure that, a guy like Kareem Artal is the answer for a situation that comes up with Brazile. I think Carter Knox is one we've talked about. If you don't add anybody else, he's probably getting the bulk of the 4 minutes that Trevor Brazile's not playing. And now you've got probably 2 wings out there and 2 guards and a big man. And that's probably what you're doing. Again, there might be times where we see, Pringle and Ewan on the court at the same time when Brazile's off of the court. And then Artal's a guy again. Is it emergency only and you feel good about the quality that he brings in an emergency? And he's not really going to have a planned role. I mean, that's where I oscillate. I don't know the answer to that. Same with Seeley, So, that's where things stand if those are your 10. And again, to me, the staff is telegraphing and trying to say, we don't see this just as an 8 deep. We see that we got 2 more that we can use if needed. Whereas last year, you didn't go past 9. The difference was your top 9 in quality are about what your top 8 in quality is. So you did, again, cut down in that regard if you're finished. On the flip side, you did win more games when you weren't at a full 9 rotation. So the whole thing, it just turns itself inside out. There's valid reasons to say that this plan makes sense based on experience from last year, but also based on experience from last year, it also makes sense that you would get at least one more depth piece to add to this and go from 10 to 11. Nigel Tufnell, right? This is Spinal Tap. Remember, he had his amps. He jacked them up to 11. Most blokes are playing all the way up. And they're maxed out at 10. Where can you go from there? 11, exactly. So to me, that's what you do. If you're calling this a 10, let's call it an 11. And then you got Seeley and Artal as 10 and 11 instead of 9 and 10. That's how I would do it. Now, it's not to knock on those guys, but it's for reasons just given. And it looks like Arkansas has been portal shy. They went and got the 2 big men and backed away. So what could you do there? There's some names out there. I retweeted this yesterday. I thought it was interesting. Ivy League player that petitioned for an extra season and was granted that. He's also in the portal. It's kind of late, obviously getting his news. And I don't know what his recruitment looks like. It could be that he's already got something ironed out and heading somewhere. They were just waiting on this. But who knows? But Ryan Cornish, at 6'4" guard, first team Ivy League, all Ivy League last year at Dartmouth, averaged 17 points per game. But what I liked about him, he took just over 5 threes per game, made 2, 37% from 3, made 54 threes last year. He played 29 minutes per game. So if you had NIL money to retain Thiero, and if you had NIL money for Nate Ament, you wouldn't have to pay nearly as much probably for a guy like this. Now, what kind of role does he expect being in the portal? He by far had his best season last year. When you look at him numerically throughout his career, he's getting an extra season. But it's just a guy that you could say, okay, we've got another guard who can space the floor, a viable threat from 3. He's been around the college game for a while, albeit in the Ivy League. But he could be a specialist, someone that just gives you depth there. Now, the backcourt and the wings are deeper. We've talked about this. There are more bodies there And it's less of a depth need. It's more about what do you not have in that depth that's foreseeable, which is proven competent three-point shooting at the college level. It's just not existent. I mean, Carter Knox at the three, I guess we can argue because of what he did at the end of the year, the last 18 games, and being over 43% on low volume, though. But again, that's, to me, get me a guy that has that's shown proof that he can take a higher volume and knock it down at a good clip. So Ryan Cornish is out there. Just bring that up. Do I think that they're going to go get somebody like that based on the way everything's gone to this point? No, I don't think that. I don't expect it. I don't have any belief that something like that would happen, but this is how I look at it. And I'd said I would add somebody else. I'm more inclined to add a front court player for depth. I'm more inclined to do that. So I wanted to go back court and I wanted to go portal. Let's go to front court depth, and something I've talked about ad nauseum. And I've talked about this player so much in the reclass stuff. And here's a little nugget of info. I don't know if I'd call it intel because it's nothing concrete, but it's a little bit of information. Just talking to some other folks that cover recruiting on a national level. Conversation I had yesterday afternoon. There's more and more belief now that Murinen's probably going to go ahead and reclass. There's more belief that that'll happen. We've said for a while that the thought was he's the most likely in the 26 class to reclass. So it sounds the same, like the same information, but just because he's the most likely doesn't mean that you feel like he's necessarily going to do it, just maybe more likely than others. Now there's a growing belief he's going to reclass. He's the one guy so far. He's not taking part in spring and summer. He's doing other stuff. I think I saw him tweet or put something on his Instagram, the best haircut in Finland or something. So I guess he's back home. I don't know. I assume that. But if he reclasses, Arkansas, he took 3 visits last year. Arkansas in late September was the third and final visit he took at that time. Before that, it was Michigan, and before that, it was Utah. And remember, my source directly speaking with him said that was his best visit, the Arkansas visit was. He canceled a visit to Duke shortly after that, was planned a week later. He was back and forth with visiting Kentucky. He was supposed to have taken a visit at Texas Tech, but I didn't see anything come out of that. And this was, of course, what I just said about the first 3, that was back last fall. And then in the spring at some point, I don't remember if it was April or was it sometime in May, maybe April, that he was to visit Texas Tech on a weekend, would take a weekend visit. And I'm not sure that happened. I didn't see anything come of that. Not in terms of a commitment, but just in terms of any social media at all, anything, like he did with his other visits, putting out photos and wearing the uniform, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure that one happened, but I'll say it this way. If Arkansas wants to add a depth piece, and this is a 5-star guy, national top 10, 6'10", 6'11", athletic, can rebound, protect the rim, has shooting skill from beyond the arc, can put the ball on the floor and create in the mid-range, create shots pretty much anywhere. He's already 18 years old, so if he reclassed up from 26 to 25, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's basically his age group. So he wouldn't be, age-wise, that wouldn't be something that, was glaring for him to be a college freshman next year. And so what's interesting to me is you were riding forever with Nate Ament to see how that landed, a 5-star high school player, thinking you're having this group of 10. So why not go this route and go ahead and stay high school 5-star and bring somebody in that can help you not only with the 3-point shooting, but on that front line, certainly as a 4. You don't even know. Maybe he could help it be a 4-5, or maybe that would be a year 2 plan if you kept him 2 years to help at the 5. But at minimum at the 4 spot, 6'10", 6'11", somewhere in that range. Really good length, really good athleticism. Again, rim protector, rebounder, shooter, scorer. That wouldn't hurt at all. And I don't think you have to bring that in with the heavy expectation that he's going to be a day 1 starter. You could pay him NIL money like he is if you think there's a path to keep him for 2 years and let him move right in naturally to that 4 spot when Brazil leaves after next year. to me, that's the one I would be keeping an eye on. I mentioned Cornish as a veteran, kind of looking at what's still in the portal, veteran player, help you as a shooter in the backcourt. I think the front line and the 4 spot's the bigger need. I bring up Mika Miernan. If you want to go back and look at Miernan, somebody we just haven't stopped talking about. It's not like I bring him back up. It's just now that Thiero's not coming back, somebody like this would make a ton of sense to add to your front line. There's some other, there's international players out there. There's still frontline guys. There are several. Vin Allen Lumen and in the portal, a Vanderbilt player a couple of years ago that really put up numbers against Arkansas in some of those matchups, and then ended up transferring to North Carolina and didn't have wasn't as impactful for the Tar Heels as he was at Vanderbilt. But Vin Allen Lumen is still in the portal. He's still in the portal. And so that's interesting to me as well. Who's prioritizing him? What does that look like for him? He's probably a guy that, you would think is maybe more of because of the college experience and what he's shown at times in his career, is more of a known commodity than a Mika Miernan. But it also may be something where he's looking for a place to have a bigger role than playing backup to someone, in which he would be in that situation when he came to Arkansas behind Trevor Brazile. I always say this, would you jump in NIL money just to get a depth piece? And you may not have happy campers there, not just Brazile and hurting his feelings, but even the player that you're bringing in, because some of these guys, I don't know what their agendas are and in terms of what they expect. Sometimes it's not just about offending who you have, but nobody being happy and the guy you're trying to bring in, and you're paying NIL money, that'll be on a scale relative to how you see their value in your lineup and what you're trying to do. So we throw some of these names around. I put this list together yesterday around the time I retweeted the Ryan Cornish news, because once you know that once you get to the point where Thiero makes his announcement, and I expect it to be pro, what are some of the options if the staff want to go beyond the 10? I just don't think they are. And I think if they do, out of this batch of names, I just gave 3, the one that makes the most sense to me on how you can make it work in a place of need and would help you with 3-point shooting, likely, that checks a ton of boxes in one player, is Mika Miernan. So let's see I know the staff is still recruiting him and pursuing him. And that includes, because I asked, as a reclass. And Calipari has a history of being interested in that and pursuing that. Now, there are other 25 guys and players in the 26 class that could also decide to reclass later. Several of those names have been kicked around. Tyron Stokes, even though the talk is he's not going to reclass, and he was going to skip spring and summer, and then he decided to play, there are people out there that think that's still not resolved, that's not a full resolved situation in terms of him. And he's a guy that's talking Arkansas visit. We mentioned Miernan's already visited Arkansas. Stokes plans to visit Arkansas at some point. So, keep an eye on some of this stuff. All right, one last piece of information before we jump off here, 33 minutes in. Jake Lanier, class of 2026, in-state player. We see so many in-state players leave the state to play in these, higher level, independent school, playing on the Nike Scholastic circuit, and Lanier was one that did that. He left Maumelle, played his freshman and sophomore seasons there, left there, went to Arizona Compass Prep initially last year for his junior season, then transferred from there in the middle of the season to DME Academy. But he is back. He's back in Arkansas. He'll play his senior season at Little Rock Parkview. Jacob Lanier, a 6'6" guard. Sweet stroke from 3, man. You talk about a shooter. And Arkansas continues to keep tabs on him. I reported on that recently, that they continue to keep tabs on him, maintaining recruiting contact. We know there's a lot of names in the class of 2026 that are top 10 rated 5-star backcourt players. And they've already got J.J. Andrews as a wing. Jacob Lanier, to me, is a 2, more of a 2. And could play on the wing, could help you at the wing, handles the ball well enough. And he's got a really good floor IQ. He'll make good passes. There's some versatility there, but I probably slot him mostly as a 2, but he's back in the 501 for senior season. Rivals ranks him the number 46 player in the country, so top 50 4-star. Some other services, I think he's rated top 100 by at least a couple other services, but as high as 46 again by Rivals. Jacob Lanier, we'll just keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on that in terms of how it relates to the Razorbacks. But, the previous coaching staff as well had shown interest in him, gone out to see him. Again, this staff, in the year plus that Calipari's been here, staff members have been courtside for his games, including Calipari. That has happened, and we've talked spring and summer. And then, of course, Calipari was out to Arizona Compass Prep. I believe it was Calipari a while back when Lanier was still there. So, again, we'll see if that goes anywhere with the Razorbacks recruiting. But either way, it's a significant amount of news, especially for basketball in the state, to have a player come back and going to finish up in the state. Of course, J.J. Andrews in the state, Little Rock Christian Academy for senior season. That's where he's been. He'll be there all 4 years. A lot of top-level guys in the state. Isaiah Seeley, the incoming freshman who we talked about, obviously played at Springdale. And so, Arkansas basketball continues to be great. Top to bottom, the Pro Hogs, we'll leave with this. Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams have helped Oklahoma City get to the NBA Finals, wrapped up a 4-1, a gentleman's sweep over the Minnesota Timberwolves last night. And, it's interesting because if you look at the track record with Pro Hogs in the NBA Finals, it's a rich one all of a sudden. Go back 5 years ago, Bobby Portis, a force as the sixth man. And even though he hasn't won an NBA Sixth Man of the Year officially, he's been the best sixth man in the NBA consistently over the last 5 years. But you go back to year one in Milwaukee as the sixth man, he helps the Bucks win the franchise's first NBA title in 50 years since they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson. But Big Portis and the Bucks won it in 2020, 21. The following season, Moses Moody, as a rookie with the Golden State Warriors, helped that recent dynasty to a title in 21, 22. He actually was in the top 2 rotation in the Western Conference Finals win over the Dallas Mavericks. He was in the top 2 rotation, getting rotation minutes and being productive and helpful. Didn't play as much in the finals, although he did, I think, play a little bit in the finals. He technically got in. So he, I'm going to say it. If you're in the rotation in the conference finals to help your team get to the next level, you contributed. You weren't just there to get the ring. And I'm not going to pretend like he was one of their main guys, but Moody again was helpful to get there. And then once they got there, he played. So that was the second year in a row that a Pro Hog went to the NBA Finals and won it. The next season, I think it was the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat in the finals. Denver won that. I don't think there were any Pro Hogs involved there. But then last year, 23-24, you had 2 Pro Hogs in the finals, again, on opposite teams, right? Opposing teams. You had Jordan Walsh and the Boston Celtics. Walsh on the 15-man roster, gets a ring. That was a situation where he played most of his minutes, obviously, in the G League. He did play a little bit sparingly in the season. I don't know if he checked in. He might have played in the finals. I have to go back and look at that. He might have checked in one of those wins. Boston ran roughshod over the Mavericks in the finals. Daniel Gafford, who joined the Mavericks at the trade deadline and helped that team be one of the top teams in the NBA, not only to finish the regular season, but as a 5 seed, I believe they ran through the Western Conference to get to the final. And so Gafford played in a finals. He's got that experience last year and lost. So by my math, that was 4 Pro Hogs in 4 years to play in the finals. 3 of those getting rings, and in the case of Gafford, getting a conference championship ring, but not the finals ring. Well, now you've got 2 more, Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams. So that's 6 Pro Hogs in the last 5 NBA finals. That's insane. And Oklahoma City is going to be the favorite. 68 win season. I think they're one of only 6 teams to win 68 games or better in a regular season. They've set all kinds of standards along the way. The best record ever, I think they only had 1 loss against Eastern Conference. That was an NBA record. They're the youngest team to win that many games. And they're still the youngest. I think they'll be the second youngest team to play in the finals. I think the Portland Trailblazers back in the late 70s had a team but that the average age was like just slightly younger. But they've already had, I think, 4 30-point margin wins in the playoffs. That also is an NBA record. I mean, they've set a ton of records, this team has, and now they're just waiting to see if Indiana Pacers can wrap it up against the New York Knicks, I guess, tonight. And that would be a gentleman's sweep. If that's the case, it's in the Big Apple at Madison Square Garden. Look, Indiana's got an insanely great road record. I don't even know if they've lost on the road yet. They may have in the playoffs, but they've got they're really good on the road. So maybe Indiana sews it up, and that would probably be the most fun series, Indiana, because of how high octane the offense is, and they've got a lot of weapons. And it's kind of one of those things you don't know who's going to get you on any given night, and they could score a lot of points, and the ball moves. And I think that's how you have to. I think that's how you have to attack this Oklahoma City team. You got to move the ball with the pass because their gap help is insane. And Minnesota kept doing the same things, trying to dribble beat their guy, and you can't do that. The help's too good. Their communication on defense is too good. The players the defenders they brought in, the players they have, the way they constructed that is too good to play that way. The ball's got to be hot to have a chance against them. And Indiana's got depth again. They've got quality. That would be the more interesting series to me. The NBA would love somehow for the Knicks to salvage this because it's a big market and it's a huge storyline because people have been, waiting on the Knicks to finally do something again and win something. It's been a long time for that organization to be in a title series, let alone win one. But I think if the Pacers probably take care of business, even if it's not tonight, they'll get it done. They're up 3-1, so they're, they've just got to win one more with, at most 3 to go. All right, so congratulations to Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams. Again, speaking of that, I put some information out last night about these guys. Joe is one of only 8 Oklahoma City players to play in all 16 of their playoff games. So, that's pretty good because they, in the regular season, they go 10 or 11 deep. They're still playing their bench. It's kind of hit and miss how many minutes guys get. Joe's had more of a role in this last series against Minnesota than he did in the previous one against Denver. And he had a big role in their rotation in the first round series win over Memphis. Jalen Williams, heaviest, I think he played in all 4 games against Memphis, but his biggest role and opportunities were in the 7-game series against the Denver Nuggets. In the stretch of minutes that he would defend the Joker and really frustrated him and helped, that was a closer series. I mean, it went 7 games. It went all 7 games, so obviously it was. But Jalen Williams was really big and impactful in that series. So both of these Pro Hogs have put their stamp on these playoffs and what Oklahoma City's been able to accomplish. Just because they're not starters and playing 30-plus minutes a game every night out doesn't mean that they're not contributing to what it is. And, coaches and players, they're going to say it takes everybody. But when you watch the games, we can confidently say these guys have actually impacted winning in games in all of these, in each of these series effectively. Both of them have had their hands in winning. And so, and in some crucial moments. And so I think that's important to remember now as they chase the ultimate, the final, the championship ring. All right, I really am signing off. Kevin McPherson, this has been HogvilleNET YouTube Live, the Thursday, May 29th Spasm. If you haven't done it already, please hit like, subscribe, share the content. We appreciate it. It helps us out. If we have to jump on for something breaking, which right now I don't see where that's coming from, we're going to talk again, more recruiting, schedule stuff. I keep promising that. I'm still working on a couple of things there. Plenty of other stuff to go around. We got plenty of, it's not just going to be fluff content either, stuff that matters with your program. But until next time, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. See you soon.